he was walking us through actual experiments. He wasn't like, sit and talk at you teacher. We
Mhm.
did activities and experiments. I remember the first time calculating gravity through like that. There's a regular experiment everyone does, right? And calculate
Mhm.
gravity. And that blew my mind as a
Mm.
high schooler. I was like, you telling me I can tell you when this is going to hit the ground? This is crazy.
So, welcome to another episode of Learning for Truth and Love. Today we have our guest, Dr. Simone Hyater-Adams. We have a different kind of guest today. We have a physicist and who has chosen a non-traditional route even after becoming a physicist. And so I'm excited to have you as our guest today. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having
Awesome.
me.
So, I'm so excited about this conversation because I always like to have these out of the box conversations where people did something a little different, and I can see people benefiting from your journey. So, why don't we start off by having you talk about yourself and talk about who you are?
Oh man, so who I am. So I come from a family of musicians. And so that is always the first thing I think of when it comes to who I really am and where I started. I come from a family that has roots in Maryland and Virginia. I come from two kind of rebels of their family. My parents were both teaching in a music school when they met and then started dating. And then my dad and my mother got married and then moved off across the country to California. And so they were the first people really in both of their families to do something like that. My father was in the Air Force Band, and then they moved back east and had me and my brother. And so that was really the foundation. I grew up in the Philadelphia area
Hmm.
outside of Philadelphia. So South Jersey I'm a Jersey girl, is where I grew up, but I very much identify with the Philadelphia area because I'm not a New York Jersey girl. It's very different.
Hmm.
And I feel so lucky to have grown up with this idea of I can do anything,
Mm.
um, and I can just build the life I want. And so growing up with the musician family, obviously I was fully into the music and the performance arts. I was doing dancing, singing, piano lessons. I was never really the best on the instruments, but I love to sing and I always have.
Mm.
And so singing was my instrument, and I wanted to kind of take that. I still love performing all the time in different ways. So, as a child, I really grew up loving the performing arts and really focusing there.
Hmm.
But also, when I look back, I also really love science. Like when I think about in school, what I actually liked, which classes
Hmm.
I liked, it was always the science class.
Hmm.
And I think even when I was even like second grade, I somehow learned about astrophysicists and was telling my mom that I was gonna be an astrophysicist way back then. Forgot all about that. My mom brought that up to me a while ago, and I was like, "Oh, wow. This has been a thing I've wanted to do for a long time."
Wow.
And I couldn't tell you where I found out what that word was at such a young age. I know that I've always been fascinated with the sky, and that's where my love for physics started. I had big windows in my room growing up. I used to lay in my bed and just see the sky out my window from my bed, and that
Wow.
was how I went to sleep every night.
Nice.
So who am I? I am kind of the product of all of this.
Hmm.
It has made me into this person who has just built my career around my passions for both the arts and sciences.
Hmm.
And I'm a trained physicist who has also been trained in education and honestly a bit of organizational development
Hmm.
and really interested in inspiring the next generation of Black kids to believe that they can build the identity, the life that they actually really want, even if that path is not clear or
Yeah.
it's not already out there for them.
Wow. You know, I am so curious because so you went from really and truly loving or feeling like, oh, I love the astrophysicist, being wanting to be to physics, and you're involved with physics. I'm so
Mhm.
curious about how your feelings changed from that moment because you took a kind of a different route, right, from what you initially intended. So tell us about, how your feelings, even about physics, changed. Maybe even relate that to, well, start with telling us how you felt about it, how it changed over time. And, I know you do work in identity as well. So tell us about that journey and what shifted in your exploration of physics.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, so much. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
physics, like many people, have this story where you usually don't take physics if you're lucky until high school,
Mm.
and many people don't even take it then, excuse me. I basically let me see, it was my high school class, my junior year of high school, that I got excited about physics to discipline. I'd only knew that I wanted to take the physics class because I knew what physics was, and I knew it was hard, and I always wanted to be able to say I took the hardest class in school because I was just one of those kids. And so I took the class and didn't realize that I would enjoy it as much as I did.
Interesting.
And wha it I mean, everyone else was having a miserable time in this class. I was having the time of my life. The teacher entertained me in ways he did not entertain dry humor is really just my thing.
Oh, I'm so
And so
curious
he was
here.
like a really dry guy who I just thought was hysterical. He was walking us through actual experiments. He wasn't like, sit and talk at you teacher. We
Mm-hmm.
did activities and experiments. I remember the first time calculating gravity through, like, that there's a regular experiment everyone does, right? And calculate
Mm-hmm.
gravity, and that blew my mind as a
Mm.
high schooler. I was like, "You telling me I can tell you when this is gonna hit the ground? This is crazy," you know? And so I just got so excited about it in that class and knew what it was, right? Knew it
Mm-hmm.
was something I could pursue, was thinking about college. And so I think at that point, even though I had been on this kind of theater route. Like, my mom was, like, looking for theater programs for me at this point, ready to, like,
The musician.
sign me off and send me out. And I came home one day and was like, "Mom, I think I wanna major in physics." And she was just like, "Okay." Like, and it's so funny when I think about this, it's such an opposite reaction than so many
Right.
other people.
Right. They're pushing their parents are pushing them into STEM, right?
I'm like, "Oh, it was so funny." It really I think my mom's story, right, is that opposite story, right? She
Mm.
was being pushed out of her artistry as a child. She had to
Okay.
fight to be the artist that she is today,
Wow.
and so to hear me, the kid who loved the arts, and she was so excited to continue to support that for me,
Mm-hmm.
to just turn around and be like, "Nah, science, like, actually physics." She was like, "I know nothing, right, about physics. I don't know how I'm gonna support you. I don't know how I'm gonna be your biggest cheerleader here because
Mm.
all of my connections, everything I know about is in the art."
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And so I think that was really that moment for her. But I ended up choosing physics. And when I was in high school, I had a lot. I mean, I think my freshman year of high school, I was doing like the school play. I was playing varsity lacrosse, and I was in like all those the advanced classes, right? Like I was like doing all of these things at once. And I remember having to make decisions at that point, and I decided, like, to not pursue theater in that moment. Instead, I just continued to do the choruses, and I was taking classes during the day, but I didn't do the school plays because it conflicted with my athletic schedule that I was way more committed to. Alright, I was absolutely an athlete in high school. So by the time I was ready to go to college, I was choosing, am I going to the colleges that are recruiting me for the athletics? Am I going for the theater and the music that I've always loved? Am I going for the physics? Am I going for, whatever else? And I just remember being really overwhelmed by that decision. Um, because it really does feel so heavy as a high schooler, having to decide where you're going for the next 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
But I ended up deciding to go for physics, and I decided to go to Hampton University. My mom really wanted me and my brother to go to HBCUs. Like, she
Mm-hmm.
really was pushing us that direction. And I was iffy about it, but I'm just actually really grateful
Mm-hmm.
that I did go that direction. And so I went to Hampton because they had a physics department that was just like supposedly kind of beefed up by a new director for the department. And maybe you even know him. His name is Donald, and I can't remember his last. I only had little overlap with him at Hampton, but I went there because of what he was doing in the department, and when I got there, he had already he left. He'd gone to another school, and that was really unfortunate. However, what he did was still, I think benefiting the department and honestly benefited me. I know there were, like, partnerships they had that I know I got scholarships through those partnerships and, like, collaborations and things, and so I ended up going into a physics department that even though at the time, like, it is not was not the most resourced and equipped, really knew how to support the students because they cared and they had women in the office who cared about the
Mhm.
students, even if
Wow.
the
Yeah.
professors didn't.
Mhm.
And those women, I mean, Jan Mangana, Monique Howard,
Yeah.
those women meant the world to my experience. They're the ones who connected me to, the STEM Bridge program,
Mhm.
through I think it was, Langley
Mhm.
era NASA Langley. They had this, I don't even think this bridge program exists anymore, but they had this, bridge program for the area, and it
Mhm.
connected students to NASA Langley, and that was one of my first research experiences was getting a scholarship to just learn about what research is.
Yeah.
That changed my trajectory completely because I didn't know that research was a field. I didn't know what that was even. I don't even think
Mhm.
I realized that that was a part of what being a professor was.
Right.
And I didn't even know what I was signing up for. What they told me was, "Simone, you're getting $1,000 a year. You wanna apply for this scholarship?" And I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." So I went on this path. I started learning about research freshman year. I mean, my freshman year, because of this program, I was doing research already. Like, I went to talk to a professor because they told us to go talk to professors, and that professor
Mhm.
hired me. And so I have been doing research since that time, and I learned a lot. I did research. He had me working on a satellite algorithm.
Mhm.
Um, Truly did not like that, learned I was not a coder. Oh, and then I went on to do the work in the summertime for this
Mhm.
internship at NASA,
Mhm.
and that was related to this bridge program I was in at school, but it was a separate summer thing, so I was,
Mhm.
like, able to kind of go actually work on site. And so I did that twice, 2 rounds of it, and so the first time I was doing this, like, civic engineering project that was so weird. I still to this day am like, "Somebody is out here doing that," which was literally just designing a tree windbreak. Have you heard of a tree windbreak?
What is that?
I did not either. Literally, and this is like must be a rural thing, right? I'm a city girl.
Yeah.
So, but designs in towns rurally, when you have a farm, oftentimes people will like plant trees in a line. If you've seen like the tree line. Yeah. And
Like
that is
literally
actually
a tree
a
windbreak. 'Cause bridge
tree windbreak. Right.
I kind of
Yes.
pictured it as something mechanical, you know?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was like, "Oh, you mean just literally intentionally planting trees? Okay." And this guy at NASA was really convinced that NASA should do this to support from
Mhm.
hurricane winds and things like this, and
Mhm.
so I was basically creating a report
Yeah.
to argue that and did all this research on what that was, so
Mm.
it was very interesting.
Wow.
And what I ended up finishing my undergraduate thesis on was actually laser spectroscopy, which was the most exciting research I think I did as an undergrad, other than my
Wow.
education research,
That is
where I
pretty
was
cool.
literally able to test crystals that our lab was making. Like, I actually got to make a few of the ones I used, but I wasn't focusing on the crystal building, like creating. I was mostly
Mhm.
focusing on the spectroscopy and like testing them.
Mhm.
And so I just learned how to do a laser setup. I learned how to take those measurements, how to
Wow.
fight with a spectro how to fight with all of the equipment. I burnt a lot of holes in a lot of shirts and was able to get a publication out of that work.
Nice.
Went on, and yeah, and I didn't even understand how much that was, like, important. I mean, I don't think it actually came out till I was in grad school, but I was just
Mhm.
like, "Whoa, I didn't even realize I would be on this paper." So, yeah, it was kind of that was my route to what I feel like me being the most traditional scientist I had ever been, right? Like, that was it. I was doing the thing. Even though I was an undergrad, I was
Mhm.
having such an authentic experience. And so my final year or my final summer in undergrad, I went back to that. I went back.
Mhm.
Langley, and I was working with an education researcher. Her name is
Mhm.
Margaret Pippin, amazing mentor to me,
Mhm.
love her.
Awesome.
I'm still to this day is doing great work.
Mhm.
She's a scientist and does basically, atmospheric science research, but mostly what she was doing when I was there was kind of a professional development kind of program for middle school teachers. The idea was to get teachers to use NASA's data that they collect
Mhm.
every day in classes.
Mhm.
And they're doing that through walking them through their own authentic research. So the idea is, oh, having teachers do research,
Mhm.
and they were bringing in their students to do it. But, I forget the name. I can't even believe I can't remember what the name of the program is anymore. I have one of those really long, acronyms. But the idea was giving teachers authentic research experience. And I just worked on that project as, like, the intern and support for the projects. I was doing a lot of that technical background stuff, so I was, like, literally showing teachers how to download the data, how to clean the data, but I also got to do a bunch of other stuff, like, her team also put off weather balloons every day at
Nice.
NASA, so I got
Yeah.
to, like, go help with that,
Nice.
and it was just kind of a thing that I was like, "Wow, someone's doing this." So it was the time at NASA really was so cool. I enjoyed my time there. It really was one of those moments that made me really feel like I was a scientist and I was doing this work. But the thing that I wasn't doing was the artistic expression. And I missed
Mm.
so much of that. And in my
Wow.
senior year, I remember when I made the decision to not get my math minor and instead just take theater classes. And that's what I
Came
did.
back full swing, huh?
My senior year at Hampton, I was doing research at NASA, working at Bath& and Body Works, and taking theater class
Wow. Look at that.
and ap
You came right
and
back.
applying for grad school.
Yeah.
So,
So
yeah, I
wow.
did all that, and that's what got me into my grad program, which it was just the start of how all this opened up.
Wow. Now, before you tell me how that all opened up, because I'm so curious to see how you were able to mesh the two and where the two
Mhm.
intersected. It's amazing listening to your story. It's almost like watching all the research I did have done
Mhm.
come alive, right? Especially when you talk about the research about being in that environment, in an environment, a setting, right? HBCUs are created, specifically to give us that opportunity. And so it's reminding me of the research on mentorship, right? Where certain things become more or less important depending on your environment. So whatever, your professors didn't do for you because you were in that environment, that supportive environment with these other women, right, who were like you and cared about you, certain things didn't matter. And we see that. I say that because a lot of times we're looking to recruit students or put students, and then you get in that environment, and then it's it's not the best place. Just because you get in, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a place to nurture your growth in very positive ways, right? There's just so much more, you know. And so, my gosh, you said so many things here. And so I'm so curious now. It's interesting though to see how our experiences, our family setting, sometimes it's hard to escape that, right?
Mhm.
It's hard
Uh-huh,
to escape
uh-huh,
that.
mhm.
I was interested in science too. And then my mom, who was an English teacher and poet and things like that, and there I go. I went back, never thought I would major in English, you know? And you can't, it's hard to escape those roots. It's hard to escape your upbringing no matter what, right? And so I'm so curious you know, because I was able to mesh those 2, so how you were able to mesh those 2, especially thinking theater and physics so tell us about, that, how you're able to mesh those 2 and what it's led you to.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, and it's so funny because I was into theater, but I honestly love theater because it allowed me to do all of the types of performance art, right? In
Mm,
theater, you act, you sing, you dance, right? You
mm,
get to do them all on the stage, and I actually genuinely love doing all of them. And so it's been funny because have bounced around amongst all of them in different ways, even today. Like, I was just at a dance class last night.
Yeah. Now,
And
now,
so
now, what does doing all mean to you? I'm just curious.
what it really was doing was reminding me of my love for the arts. There's something about the arts that really connect me to who I am,
Mhm.
and it's really all of them. I realize that I gravitate toward performance arts, but any artistic expression, even crafting, painting, those kinds of things
Mhm.
really help me ground myself in who I
Mhm.
am. And that is a piece of me that's really important and that I need.
What?
And that is what I think hilariously I learned through my
Mhm.
graduate research.
Uh,
And so how I ended up putting all this together is identity. That's what took me toward identity, really.
mhm. Yeah.
So when I was applying to grad school, I was looking at physics education research programs.
Mhm.
Most of those are in physics departments, right,
Mhm.
at universities.
Mhm.
You go through those programs as a traditional physics student. You take your traditional first year, traditional second year, do the comps,
Mhm.
and then you do your education research. It's just
Okay.
like another subdiscipline, basically, is how these programs are set up.
Mm.
And so I was looking at the big ones. There's particular universities that have really like bigger programs for this. And when I went to search, CU Boulder was the first one to come up. It actually has, I think, still one of the biggest PER programs.
Hmm.
And I was like, Colorado. Like, I had never thought about that state before, and I was
Mhm.
like, "Ugh," I'm scared. I don't know if I want to go there. So I was like emailing people. I went to go visit since I kept hearing, I think there was actually another Black woman at NASA who really convinced me I should just go check this school out since it's saying it's the best program
Yeah.
because she had gone to CU and I never heard of a Black person from Colorado. And so I was like, okay, let's go see. I literally cold emailed from my NASA account because I was not stupid.
Mhm.
And was like, "Hey, interested in coming?" And I was able to actually go present to their research group as an
Mhm.
undergrad and talked about my senior thesis there,
Mhm.
on this trip. And then they, took me around the department. I was able to chat with Noah Finkelstein and, Steve Pollock, who were the 2 kind of leads of that group. And it was really, like, super interesting because everyone was so nice. But it was also, like, the whitest place I'd ever been in my life. And so I'm like, I'm coming from an HBCU, you know?
Yeah.
I was like, "This is wild. What is this?" Um, I
Mhm.
mean, 'cause I think me and my mom were counting the number of Black people we saw over this trip, and we
Mhm.
did not get above 10
Yeah.
for the whole trip in the state of Colorado for that long. It was wild to me at that time. I was like, "Ooh, I don't know." And so I did end up going there because what they told me about was another program. So the School of Engineering at CU Boulder is huge and they have all these institutes.
Mhm.
And one of the institutes they have is called Atlas, the Alliance for Technology, Learning, and Society.
Mhm.
And in Atlas, they were doing a lot of really cool, innovative stuff.
Mhm.
It was basically supposed to be like the innovative institute, the one that, like, people are coming to do the new tech stuff, and I think the Alliance for Learning and Society piece is where that education focus comes in
Mhm.
to what they do at Atlas. And so when I applied, I basically said, "I'm interested in, uh, you know, understanding more about physics education,
Mhm.
but I'm also a performance artist, and I wanna figure out how to put these things together. Here are some of my ideas." And I listed out ideas that honestly but I just proposed the idea to this kind of build your own PhD program that Atlas has.
Mm.
And so I applied there. I applied to the traditional physics department, and I applied to multiple other traditional physics education research programs. And I got into 2. I got
Mhm.
into one traditional one 'cause those are the hardest. That's when I learned about all the classes they require that Hampton did not did not offer,
Mhm.
and how that was really actually a barrier to me getting into my PhD programs, but not for me because I had so much research experience, and so
Mhm.
that is what I truly try to tell people is, like,
Mm.
these barriers are there's ways through them. There's holes in them. There's gaps
Right.
on the bottom. You
Yeah.
can squeeze your way through those.
Absolutely.
And I grew up with a mother who knew this and navigated her world like this as a Black
Mm,
woman, and so I was really equipped to go outside of the lines, right? So I was talking to people directly, getting more insider understanding of what made sense, and I ended up choosing between Florida International and this program at CU Boulder. And I
mm,
think that was the defining decision, was if I'm gonna continue on the traditional physics path, I would have taken all the grad classes, basically gotten the master's in physics before I would have started my education research and learned more about. But honey, I was burnt out
mm,
after my undergraduate experience, and I was like, "I do not wanna go back into a physics class that is gonna drain me."
mm,
I was losing my love for physics, I think,
mm.
after getting my undergraduate degree.
Okay.
And it's about how physics is taught. It's about the ways that we teach and train people to be physicists, because it's not a training, it's like a filtering, right? It's not there to inspire, it's there
Yeah.
to beat you down and see if you can still make it through. And so I was so exhausted, and I often think about those moments where I feel so drained and exhausted, or I felt so drained and exhausted because, at one point I was that star student for this physics
Mm,
department, right? Like I was the one who I had the highest GPA in the department, and I was getting all the opportunities, and I was doing that star student thing, right?
mhm, okay.
By the time I was done, I had no love for it, you know? So it's like, what is this program for? It can't be to inspire, because I am uninspired.
And burning yourselves out. I'm so curious as to what it was that burned you out. Was it being the
Mm,
star student, giving yourself too much to do? Was it, our competitive nature? I'm just so curious
hmm,
because that's something
good
that's
question.
people are talking about a lot. Go ahead.
So the burnout feeling is something that I'm starting to realize is maybe a condition of adulthood, so I'll say that now in retrospect. But
Yeah.
I think, a big part of what really uninspired me was, like I said, I really think it was the classes. Like, I
Mm,
really do. Even when as my upper division classes, I struggled through, and I had at least 1 or 2 teachers who I do think were, like, really intentional.
mhm,
All of them I do actually believe cared, but, like, I not everyone is meant to be a teacher, right? Not everyone is good at teaching.
mhm.
Not
Yeah.
everyone is good at trying to communicate information in a way that's exciting and
Right.
engaging. And so it really became like these classes that felt more like a hurdle that I could never get over, even though I was fully equipped to get over this hurdle, right? But like it can only work with, what was there. And so I know now that really I think my struggle with those classes is I would think a couple of my senior classes, there was one where I was the only student in it, right? Only student in the class,
Mhm.
one professor, and this man had me in a tiny little conference room, and he was on a whiteboard just writing and talking to the whiteboard, and I'm the only student in the
Right.
class.
Oh my gosh, when you said that initially, I was picturing somebody did that. Somebody did that not too long ago. He having his whole lecture and didn't look back to see the response.
At all. Just
So
talking to yourself on the board. And I remember just sitting in that little conference room, like, and in the classes I flourished in, it was with classes where I felt confident enough to tell the professor, "Hey, stop. I don't know what you're doing.
yeah.
We're gonna have to come back here. What are you doing?" I used to do that for classes of students. Like, I started
Mhm.
off like that freshman year, and by senior year,
Yeah.
I was so drained. I was
Mhm.
just sitting there in that conference room with that
Like, what are you
teacher.
doing? Yeah.
And so I really do think that that is a big part of what drained me, and I think it's
Mhm.
a problem everywhere, like, it's in almost every physics department, it's not
It is.
just Hampton, right?
Right.
It's in most STEM departments, I'd even argue to
Absolutely.
say.
And not just STEM, it's just
Right.
it's one of those ego things where you talk on. And what's interesting is doing the opposite can also have a disconcerting effect as well, right? Because
Mhm,
especially when
mhm.
students aren't used to you checking in, like, Yeah, I wanna
Right.
make sure you understand, you're drawing them out. You know, sometimes they wanna sit there passively, right? Receiving information and, thinking you've learned it when you haven't, and when you do that check-in, it's disconcerting because, you're putting them a little bit on the spot as well,
Exactly.
does
Calling
this
them
mean
out for what
anything
they
to
don't
you?
know.
Right. And so sometimes that engagement also can be disconcerting for those who prefer to kind of stay asleep, as per se, right?
Yeah, and also our school systems are what? Training them to think that that is what learning is, right? Like, if all you've ever done in school is sit and receive information,
Mm-hmm.
that's what you expect, So it is, yeah, it is a very I think I got drained by the education piece, and that's part of what inspired me to go into the education field.
Mm. Okay.
Is, hey, physics is actually why can't my idea, why can't people teach like my high school teacher who actually inspired me,
Mm-hmm.
right? And he wasn't even inspiring the whole class once again, like, all of my friends who I have at least 3 friends today who were in that class with me,
Uh-huh.
who are one is an engineer, but he also
Uh-huh.
hated that class. The other one dropped the class,
Yeah.
like, he didn't reach everyone, you can't reach
Yeah.
everyone.
No, you're not
But
gonna reach everyone.
yeah. But he cared, and I think there were definitely teachers, like, I remember crying to a professor at Hampton, my quantum professor, because I
Mm-hmm.
was just struggling so bad, and I remember him because he was so kind and
Mm-hmm.
understanding even though he was not a gr
He was what?
he was not a great
Oh,
teacher,
not a
right?
great
Like, I was struggling in his class because I did not understand, right?
Yeah.
And I would go to his office hours, but he was like, "You are no, you are going to get into a program." Like, I was like, "I'm not gonna get into grad school. I can't even understand this quantum homework." And he's like, "No, no, no." He had to, like, literally talk me off, talk me down,
Mm-hmm.
and just say, "Listen, like, you have the ability to do this," and, like, remind me that
Wow.
I was capable in a moment where I forgot. And so there were people who really cared on my path. Even still, I feel like so much was put into me as a student for me to still end up in these places where I feel so exhausted and uninspired.
Mm.
It really was like, yeah, it was shocking to see how I'll maybe go fast forward to my first physics grad class.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I came into CU Boulder, say more about this program, I was able to actually build my curriculum
Mm-hmm.
with my advisor, of course, and my advisor was in the physics department. And so we put physics classes on my schedule for my first semester, and we decided what other classes made sense. I was able to design it, so I was able to start learning about education research before my peers in the PER program
Mm.
who had to go through all the, like, physics intro classes before they even got to that. And so I immediately started learning about, like, research methods in education
Mm-hmm.
and other topics. I think eventually I started taking ethnic studies classes as well. So I was able to create a curriculum that not only had like some of the physics stuff, but some of the education research content and performance art. Like I was able to take dance classes as well
Nice.
in my graduate program. Yeah, it was fantastic. And I became an honorary member of the dance department at CU for a little while there. But I had multiple homes on campus. And I think that was
Yeah.
critical to my success at CU Boulder, not just for my education, but for my mental health. And so I was not stuck in the
Mm.
physics department, right?
Nice.
And so first, I remember my first class, I took math methods. Okay, because once again, I didn't take linear algebra at Hampton. That was the class I decided not to wait for and instead take theater.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get to this math methods class and they assume you've taken linear algebra.
Mm.
And so I'm in there trying to learn that and figure out what's going on in this class. And it was maybe my lowest point as a physicist. Like, I don't think there's any other time in my life that I felt less like a physicist than in this one grad class. And it was just math methods. It wasn't even the physics.
Yeah.
But it was like we said, it was like the first day where I know this lady probably meant so much good, but first day she just gives you an assessment. And that assessment, I remember looking at it and feeling like, "Holy crap, I don't know anything on it. I don't know what
Mm.
this is. What is this?" think I
Mhm.
might recognize, like one of these. I don't know if I answered one question on that assessment,
Wow.
and the rest of the semester pretty much just went like that. At one point, I was sitting in the classroom, and the whole time I was just like, "Why am I here? Why am I here? Why am I here?"
Mhm.
Like, it was just yeah. It was so like, moralizing,
Mm.
and I remember feeling like I just couldn't do it. I was also teaching, I was TAing for the intro class, and I just yeah, I was doing a lot. Once again, I was one of those students that did everything, and so I was TAing for classes, I was doing research with an after-school program that was funded as an NSF Physics Frontier Center. Jilla is a part of the physics department at CU Boulder, and as a part of the Physics Frontier Centers, they have to have, like, an outreach component.
Mhm.
And so there was a postdoc I worked closely with as a grad student, Katie Hinko, who ran their after school program and then also did research on it for the PER research group. And so that was where I was assigned a research assistantship. And so I was running those outreach programs, TAing, and I was in full classes for my first year. And then I think I picked up an additional class to teach one of these semesters as well. Like, I was teaching the support class to the intro class to, like, the students in the academic kinda success center
Mhm.
that they had on campus.
Mhm.
And once again, doing a million things, it was very, very draining. I think I worked myself way too hard my 1st and 2nd year because by the time I got through to my spring semester, I was kind of that was burnt out really
Mm.
bad. I've been burnt out at least twice in grad school. And it only took a year or 2 to get there the first time, and I considered leaving. But my research at that time was kind of starting in the outreach program and moving toward me thinking about identity already. I was interested in this idea of what it means to be a physicist in this moment where I felt like I was stripped of the identity, right? Like, I felt like I just did not belong at that place. I
Mhm.
didn't feel like I belonged there at all. Only Black woman, really only Black person most of the time, and didn't feel like I knew as much as everyone else, and you know what that stereotype threat is? It was just stopping me from being able to advocate for myself and being able to learn, and it was deep rooted. Like, I feel like I had been able so easily to break through that type of anxiety to, like, learn. Like I told you at Hampton, I was getting up in front of the class like, "Excuse
Right.
me," and everyone else in class would appreciate it, right? Like, you know how
Mhm.
that goes. Like, everyone in
Yeah.
class is like, "We also didn't know," right? Like,
Right.
they didn't know what was going on either. But I could not do that in that math methods class. I would go to the office hours. I even started a study group, and then I
Mhm.
sat in the study group at my desk because I was scared to ask for help. I just don't even know. I felt like I was broken. It felt
Hmm.
like I was a broken
I'm so curious because first you said, oh, it was welcoming, right? An environment, and I'm curious about it too because I do research and look at belonging and identity as well. And so I'm curious about what changed. And I know, was it just that one class there? Was it just the feelings of not I'm not knowing and everybody knows? And like where did it start in terms of you not feeling you can advocate for yourself? Did something particular happen? Um does
Mm,
something stand out to you as a moment, you know, of realization or something? I'm just curious.
yeah. I don't know if I can think of the exact moment. I think
Mhm.
when I really analyzed that moment for myself,
Mhm.
I think it had to do with a lot, a lot. There
Mhm.
was a lot going on in my world. I mean, personal life,
Okay.
just moving across the country, right? That was the first time I'd ever lived so far from my family. I didn't know anyone, went to Colorado and was, like, crying on the way to my home just because the emotion of feeling like I am just so alone and in this very strange and empty place in the middle of nowhere, right? Like, that's really what it felt like to me the first few months, and then I ended up having a medical issue. I ended up being in the hospital that first summer. Then I came in to start my graduate degree program, and that was in 2014. If you remember what the world was like in 2014, but that was the beginning of that Black Lives Matter movement. That was the Mike Brown
Mm.
shooting era. Trayvon Martin era of Black Lives Matter movement, and I'm in the whitest place I've ever been in my life.
Mhm.
And so I'm feeling the weight of the world around these happy-go-lucky white people, right, who are just living their best lives.
Right.
And I am drowning, right? Like,
Mhm.
and I think there was so much. And I don't even have my community because 'cause I'm across the country.
Right.
And so I don't think I put all of that into the bag then when I was
Mhm.
thinking about what was really going on, but when I look back, I'm like, "That was actually just a lot,
Mhm.
objectively, to be
Yeah.
going through at once." Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Mhm. Mm.
It's something that I try to reflect on myself,
Mhm.
going from different spaces. I did the opposite that you did,
Mhm.
Well, I shouldn't say that. I kinda did like a little V, like, and then returned to a similar space. Yeah, because
Yeah, it
growing up
was
in a Black environment.
I was just saying, yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Growing up in a Black environment and going to, an Ivy League where, it's a white environment and then going to an HBCU, that was my I
That was
mean,
your path.
right, but the HBCU was for work. It wasn't for, education.
Okay, yeah, and I know that's probably a different culture shock that way.
But yeah, but, it felt like going home. I've spoken to faculty who were first time at the HBC in the same place, and we all equated the same thing. We're like, "Wow, this just feels like coming home," right? Or people are getting killed. So it's like, who am I going through this with?
Right, right,
Whereas when you're in
right.
that environment, you're not the effect is different because you have a different level of support. But yeah. But I do want to start talking about currently, because just to let you know, Dr. Hyater-Adams, we met because of my work in research for a phys tech program. I've had to seek creative ways to find support for the kind of work I do, focusing on Black representation, right? In
Yeah.
science and in the science curriculum. And so, can you fill us in? What place
Yes,
all of that experience brought you to that you enjoy,
yes, yes. Yeah, I feel like that, yeah, we've talked about maybe half of the journey. The research part is, kind of I feel like I veered off from that
It's
so far,
fascinating, it's awesome. Yeah.
but I definitely developed a deep understanding and, um, interest and a kind of appreciation for work on identity
Mm,
through my studies of, like, the Black experience.
mm,
When I was in grad school, I always say I used to joke and say I didn't know I was Black till I moved to Colorado. It is a joke. It is a joke that feel or felt so real at the time
I'm
because
sure.
I knew what it meant to be Black, but I didn't know what it meant to be really like Black in a only
Mhm.
all white space, right? Like
Right.
that's when your Blackness becomes the most apparent.
Mhm.
And I even learning that, really understanding that the Black folks on the East Coast that are folks like who grew up like me are very different than the Black folks who live in Colorado, right? It's just
Mhm.
very different Black communities.
Yep, definitely.
So even when I found Black folks, they weren't the Black folks who grew up like me.
Mhm.
And so I was starting to learn about those different experiences, and that's what got me into that.
Mhm.
So I went into my research with the idea of, okay, how can I like put performance art and physics together? Well, I can try and teach physics using performance art. Maybe
Mhm.
I could somehow write a book about it. I had an idea to do a show, which was why Atlas really was excited about this, the director. I did not
Mhm.
do it. But I was thinking about doing, like, a Big Bang Theory, but a different one that shows, like, the non-traditional setup for physicists, right? And, like, have the dumb blonde be, like, a white blonde guy instead, and all the physicists be women of color.
Mm.
And just I was like, "I would rather watch that show." And so I was, thinking about all these ways I could put these things together, and when I started taking these education classes and I started reading the work of, like, Naila Nasir and like some of these educational psychologists like Levin Wenger's community of practice
Mhm.
work, but also learning about a lot of these ethnographic studies around like what education has been for folks of color.
Mhm.
And I just started realizing that these like imposter syndrome, these things that have been blocking me on my own educational journey is like baked into the institution.
Mm.
Like these things are by design and there's actually a lot of work that needs to be done
Mm.
with our education
Yeah.
systems if I'm going to somehow make this world easier for the next me. I
Mhm.
need to really think about this.
Mhm.
And so learning about development of identity and how education actually does a lot to help us shape how we see ourselves and who we
Mhm.
are.
Yeah.
Um, that's what kind of got me into it. It also I became a very, very ingrained in like the social justice movements while I was in
Mhm.
Boulder. I mean, I was part of those organizing meetings. I was going to protests. I was doing a lot of that type of work as a student.
Mm.
I was doing it in the community and on campus separately, right? Like I
Mhm.
was also organizing things with other students on campus. And so my work kind of became so it's shaped into that more if I'm gonna do anything in this world, it's gonna be through this social justice lens because there's so much that needs to be done. I can't be doing work that isn't pushing that forward
Mhm.
somehow. And then I realized that where these two things come together in me is within my identity, right? Like who I am has always been a scientist, someone who's curious about their environment since I could speak. I was asking about the world around me, as many people are. We all are, if you ask me, scientists from a young age. But I've always been that. I've always been someone interested in art, being a performer and an artist. I was literally producing shows as a child for my family cookouts, right? I am still that person today. This is integral to who I am and how I see myself.
Mhm.
And so I was like, I wonder if I'm the only person. I'm like, it's gotta be other Black physicists who have this type of like connection, identity connection to performance art. And I was just so interested in asking other Black physicists about their experience and how they identify as a
Mhm.
physicist, almost as therapy for me. Like I
Mhm.
just needed to know I wasn't alone. And I
Mhm.
quickly discovered I was not. Okay.
Yeah.
And so my research project in that period of time that I told you I was burnt out, it was my second year, second semester of grad school, and I was working the postdoc who I was working with was on maternity leave, and so another woman of color who's Venezuelan, Claudia Fracchiola, she works at APS now. She came in as a postdoc and kind of filled in for me, and having her also changed my world. Another woman of color who changed my world because she gave me the explicit permission that I did not have from my other advisors to just do the research I wanted.
Yeah.
And that's when I started interviewing the Black physicists and started my
Mhm.
work. And that journey led me through understanding the frameworks and the way physics education researchers talk about identity.
Mhm.
My critique of that was that it felt so internalized and did not talk enough about those external factors that I know heavily influenced my experience of how I saw myself as a physicist. Like I was a physicist at Hampton. A summer later, I moved to Colorado and was stripped of that identity in one semester, half of the class, right?
Mhm.
And it wasn't even a physics class. I keep thinking about this. This was math methods. It's so
It's
like
a lot of physics and math, right? A lot
yeah,
of math and physics as
a
well.
lot of math and physics. So
Absolutely.
I knew that these external factors felt like night and day for my own identity. And so I wanted to find a way to create a framework for this that really amplifies those external factors. And so my research did that by basically using the framework that was being used, which an augmented version of the science identity framework from Carlone and Johnson researchers,
I know. Yeah.
science
Mhm.
education researchers.
Mhm.
Zara Hazari, a professor who
Mhm.
was at Florida
Absolutely.
International,
Yeah.
and that's who I was gonna work with actually if I had gone there.
Yeah.
Uh,
Wow.
I know. I
Yeah,
was
she's
really
amazing.
excited to go there and work with her and Jeff.
Yeah.
And sometimes I wonder what my life would have been if I'd done that. But I still use her framework that was augmented from that, and they used it with the kind of, they use big data with that. And I tried to use it with a framework created by Naila Nasir from Berkeley.
Mm,
I think she's now like the head of the Spencer Foundation, but her work is around math education identity, which I also did a lot of research into for my work, especially once again, my own story with math, right? I have
mhm,
my own math story that I didn't even get into, but is actually a deeply rooted thing for me. I think my math, it was in fifth grade when I learned that I wasn't good at math because of a teacher being racist, basically.
mm,
And so many Black folks have that experience with math.
yeah.
And so Naila Nasir had this framework that kind of situated the environment's resources that are available or not, right? If the resources in one's environment that can be there to support your identity in math,
Mhm,
and kind of analyze that as a part of her framework on
mhm.
identity
Wow.
rather than the current physics identity framework that focuses a lot more on those internal, how much do I believe,
Mhm,
measuring how much I believe I'm a physicist, right?
mhm,
And so I tried to put those things together to try and create a fuller picture of
mm,
what is impacting physics identity. And so that was what my PhD research ended up being theoretically, was that framework work.
mhm.
But how I used it then was to then try and design an outreach program, because I told you I was doing the outreach program work
Right.
to support identity. Like, so what do I need to have in the environment of my outreach program to
Mhm,
support identity, and to support physics identity in these Black
mhm,
students? What do I need to make sure is there? What do we have to make sure we're, like, giving students opportunity to build identity in?
mhm,
How do we get them to believe that they can do the things? How do we get them to believe that they can understand the things?
mhm.
And how do we get them to be interested in the thing?
Yeah.
And how do we give them recognition for it? Those are the 4 kind of components of the physics identity framework: competence, performance, recognition, and interest.
Mhm,
And trying to use Naila Nasir's framework to guide what those resources should be. Um, and that is what my dissertation was. I was my program design. I ran the program twice, and the framework and the study. I also I have in there the work around identity and performance for adult physicists, which everyone I interviewed had some type of, I think it was maybe with the exception of 2 people now that I think about it, had some type of performance background
mhm,
from childhood, and saw direct links between that performance background and how they identify as a physicist, and how they all talked about using those skills, right, in their pursuit of their physics degree.
wow.
And so, yeah, my work was kind of all of those things, right, now compiled into this dissertation. And along the journey of grad school, because I was also so involved with the politics of the school level, right? I mean, I'm like, I have eaten with the what is it? The president of the school.
Mhm,
The chancellors know me by name, right? I'm working in all of these places on campus. At least 4 departments know me personally because I've been in classes in all of these places, right? Like, I had access to, like, student lounges in, like, 3 different buildings just because I was considered a student in those schools, and so I was very much known and, like, spread out, right? I had a lot of homes on campus, but it was because I was doing so much,
yeah.
and so I remember being so disillusioned by just what I saw,
Mm,
how CU was treating people, how the organizations were doing. I was annoyed with how the departments were treating grad students. I was part of, like, protests for grad student
mhm,
stipends raising and things like this,
mhm,
and so I was just kind of in that fired up stage of my life with, like, being mad at the system. Like, like, I'm just, like, learning that everything's messed up, and I feel
yeah.
like this is just an arc, right, of adulthood. You learn that everything is kinda wild out here and being run kinda wild, and you get mad. You're like, "What is wrong with these people?" So, like, I just feel like I was in that phase of my life, and I just really was over the university. I was like, "I need to get out of here. I cannot go back into a system that's gonna exploit me like this. I can't." So when I graduated, everyone thought, "Oh, go the postdoc route." But when I looked at that as my option of continuing along this exploitative path, like, you want me to be paid this postdoc is maybe the most exploited position in the academy next to the, what's it called? The people who are adjuncts who get really nothing, right? And so I'm like, "This doesn't make any sense." All the way and the whole point is to get to tenure where they say they can't fire you, but I'm watching tenured professors around me get fired all over the place. So it's like, what is the actual benefit? I could not see the benefit as a student to continue on the academic path. I had worked a lot with APS outside of just because, once again, I just find myself in these places. I'd be at a conference and someone's like, "Oh, let's go to this committee meeting." Next thing I know, I'm doing a session for the next year's conference. Like it is been like that the whole time, and you know how you just fall into that in academia, and so I ended up being in these spaces and learning about those roles behind the scenes,
Mhm.
and I was like, "You know what? Maybe I need to." I think I wasn't even planning to apply to work at APS, but I left grad school even more burnt out than the first time I was gonna quit. And just went and stayed with my grandma in Maryland, and I was like, "Grandma, I just wanna sleep. Can I just sleep at your house for, like, a year?" And she was like, "Yeah, sure." But, I have a Black grandma, so that wasn't real. That was not a real offer. She let me sleep at her house for a month before she was yelling at me to get out of bed because I was sleeping in too.
She didn't realize
So,
you meant literally a year, no
I'd be like, "Grandma, I literally could sleep for a year right now."
ovaries.
And that was how burnt I remember describing to people how I felt by the time I finished my degree as an empty lotion bottle that you gotta, like, try and cut open to try and get the lotion remnants out of the sides because you forgot to go buy a new one. That is how I
Yeah.
felt.
Wow.
Drained, empty.
Never thought of that analogy, but burnout recovering can take a couple years because there's so
Yeah,
much, you're recovering on so many different levels, right? Emotionally, physically, mentally, and your biology is catching up to you, and you're catching up to your biology. So,
yeah, yeah. And yeah, and then the opportunity at APS happened. Yeah, and the national mentoring community is where I started at APS working
mhm,
with that program
okay.
and ended up going that path because programmatic work has always been an interest of mine. I mean, I had been doing it since before NASA really, but that was my first time being really in a leadership position and something like that.
Okay.
But, it taught me how to do program development. I had already, tried to create programs at that point.
Mhm,
And program management was not something I really ever learned
mhm. Yeah,
explicitly. So I learned about it in this role.
yeah. Most of us do.
Right, right. You know? Exactly. So I ended up going on that path mostly because by the time I was done with my grandma yelling at me, I was like, "Okay, now I just gotta go find my own house that I can potentially sleep in since grandma's not gonna let me sleep here, for real." And I decided I needed to go on ahead and get a job and figure out, what my next step was gonna be. And that was in 2019, right?
Mhm.
So shortly after that became the pandemic.
Yep. Right
So
after that, yeah.
that was a whole nother different and it put me down. Honestly, that pandemic was divinely timed for me because I needed the amount of rest that I could get during that
Mhm.
time, even though it was full of a fully different anxiety, right?
Yeah. You got to rest, yeah.
But
I can
I
understand.
did actually rest more, and I did not do a lot of my passion during my time at APS. It was mostly me doing a job to get by for that moment.
Mhm.
And I basically found STEM from Dance, a nonprofit in New York while I was at that job and got so excited reading about this organization that does dance and STEM programming. Basically, the girls code their costumes or whatever technology they use to perform. And I was like, wow, there's someone out here doing this. This is what I've wanted to do, right? Like, I'm trying to make these programs
Yeah.
that put these things together. And I applied to be their director of programs and got that position unexpectedly. Did not expect to get that position so early, what felt in my career, even though yeah, that's a whole nother thing. But I got that position, relocated my whole life to New York City
Mhm.
and then did not have a great time again. I was like, that organization was a struggle for me and, like, my needs in order to work. Unfortunately, it was, like, kind of a really hard time in a different way.
Mhm.
I went into it thinking I was going to have, like, another supportive environment. It's an organization that was created by Black women, right? And it was all women on that staff when I worked
Mhm.
there. And I was like, "Fine, oh, this will be different." Even from APS, which I also have my own critiques on. I'm a bad person, I'm gonna come in and give you my opinion, and Imma help you, try and make changes. And so I was in APS doing the same stuff I always do, working with the HR department. I did equity, trainings for them as an employee. And so I went to this place in this new leadership position and thought I was gonna have coaching and mentorship into that. It was not that. This woman was actually looking for someone who would kind of pick up and just run the machine the way she wanted it run, right? And I'm like, I was hoping I was coming here to be a director, which means I would direct. I don't know, like, I would have some say in what's happening around here.
Yeah, infrastructure.
And yeah, it was not that. And honestly, this is that lady's baby. I was like, I will let her do what she needs to do, and I had to gracefully bow out
Mhm.
from that organization. And I still love the work that they're doing, and I know that there's ways that I wanna work in this world, and it just did not align with the way that they were working.
Mm.
But the way that I ended up leaving that organization was really, like, hurtful and kinda put me into a whole 'nother kind of questionable place where I was
Mm.
questioning myself. And it was another time where stuff was happening in my personal life. My mom had recently been diagnosed with cancer when I left that organization. I had to shift into a caretaker role with
Mm.
her.
Wow.
And so it was just, life was lifing.
Mhm.
And I ended up leaving that place. And I decided, I went and got this PhD. I can build my career the way I want to. That's why I did that work. I don't need to struggle really. And no matter what I've done, there's been people who've reached out to me for work. And so I've never felt like I couldn't find work. And I realized that in this time of my life, and it was freeing because there's so often we push ourselves past our boundaries because we
Mhm.
have to for our livelihood.
Yeah.
And I realized that I did not have to do that. I have actually a support system
Mhm.
of people who can help me make sure I have a livelihood,
Yeah.
and I can just figure out what to do to make me happy, and that's actually a really rare thing, I think, to have in this world, and I should really lean into that and use it and be grateful for it.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what I've been doing ever since. And so
Mhm.
I think there was like, how and why am I in this place of I feel like I've been, like, almost floating, trying to really decide which direction to take all of my ideas and my things I wanna create in this world, and the stuff that I started and kind of dropped or started and put in a little box and wanna pick it back up. I've been really just trying to focus on my well-being post being a caretaker because my mother,
Mhm.
thank goodness, is in remission and
Mm.
back to kind of doing things on her own, and I don't feel that pressure there like I did in the last few years, but I also didn't take care of myself that well for that time, and
Yeah.
so I'm trying to kinda get myself back grounded and settled into living for me,
Mhm.
and what I wanna do again, because that was just not my reality for, like, a year.
Wow.
And yeah, and so when I think about what I'm doing now, it's contracts, right? AP and their programs people in their programs have reached out to me for a lot of work,
Mhm.
because I was doing a lot of good work there.
Mhm.
I was doing a lot of good
I can
work
see
there,
that.
and
Absolutely.
and so I definitely all that hard work I did in grad school just kind of created this network of people who know what expertise I have, who
Yeah.
know what value I can bring to a space, and who
Mhm.
come to me for it. And so I've been able to really sustain life off of contracts without even going out and looking for work, which is something that I don't know of any entrepreneur who can really do that.
No, your expertise is going before you. Yeah, that's awesome.
Exactly. It has been really, honestly, a blessing, quite honestly,
Mhm.
and so I do feel like I'm lucky for that, and I know that I wanna build things intentionally, and so what I've been working on now, to get to the age-old question you asked me maybe an hour ago, is that yeah, I have a company, it's called Mega Imagination LLC. Not in love with the name, but that's what it is now. My
Mhm.
dog in my lap right now is named Mega. He's it's named after him.
With the game Mega Mind.
His name is Mega
Yeah.
Man,
Uh,
like the old cartoon,
yeah.
and I basically created this as a consulting firm, for all of the work that I do.
Mhm.
And so, just like I always have, I do a lot of types of work. And so with FizTech, they hired me as an equity evaluator. And so they started by basically asking for my support with a grant that they were writing, this grant that is now currently funding the work that you do.
Mhm.
And so I supported them in writing that grant
Mhm.
and framing their equity goals for the project. And then they brought me back to support them and evaluating them through that. And so that's what I've done with FizTech. And that has been I don't feel passionate really about evaluator work, I'm gonna be real. I do like research, and it can just be so tedious. The tedious work is the stuff that gets to me, but it's
Yeah.
always needed, no matter what you do.
Yep, I understand.
So, yeah, but it is the work I've done with FizTech has been really gratifying because I don't I did a lot of equity work in my past. I felt like I was fighting with people,
Mhm.
and with FizTech, their staff, at least few of them, I should say, are
Mhm.
extremely committed to
Yeah.
trying to make sure that they are being equitable and
Mhm. I can see that.
just.
Mhm. Which I do appreciate. It's very rare and very difficult to find, to be honest.
Exactly, exactly, and that
So
is why I'm working with them,
well,
quite
that's
honestly,
why
because I
I'm
said no.
working there too. That's why I'm
Yeah.
working in this project, I should say. Yeah.
Mhm,
I think, it becomes evident, you know, who supports
mhm.
who supports folk like us and who don't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does. It does become really evident, and
Mhm.
yeah. So I also knew the staff member who reached out to me personally from when I worked at APS.
Mhm.
And knew that this was a person that I could trust, and that is part of how they even got me for the first time that they reached out. Because
Mhm.
I had become really picky with who I would work with at a time just from, when you go through so many issues, you have to be really selective to know, right? And so that is the work I do with FizTech, but I actually do a lot of work outside of FizTech. And I teach still. I teach little ones. I teach fourth through eighth graders right now virtually as a part of a position I have with a nonprofit. So I went from STEM from dance to working with a different nonprofit called Full Steam Forward,
Mhm.
and the working style of me and the staff there is just so much better. And I started as a contractor. And so I've been developing this relationship with them for like 3 years, and I work half time now. So I might even decide to go there full time, but we'll see. I don't know yet.
You're doing a lot. Don't burn yourself out.
I know. I know. But once again, it's time to make that money, and I'm trying to rev myself back up.
Yeah.
I'm out of support mode.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm interested. I do the work with the nonprofit. I'm still doing research. So the identity framework I worked on as a grad student, I'm using with a project that I'm doing with Texas State, Eleanor Close and Alexandria Cuichocho. My colleagues and we've been writing papers about like their data set of students from Texas State, just examining what is impacting the identity development for multiply marginalized women. And so they're specifically looking at women who might be at multiple intersections. So if they're white women, they're maybe queer, they're folks of color. More than one point of marginalization is really the point of that work. And I know Alexandria has a real interest in the queer experience for
Mhm.
physicists
Yeah.
and physicists of color specifically. And I'm also really interested in that. I'm working on a resource letter as well with some folks for AJP. That's a queer physicist research letter. And so, yeah, I think the part of me is always going to be there as well. And so I basically have been trying to figure out the way that I can do the work that maybe I would have done as a professor, but
Mhm.
not within a specific university, and that doesn't mean that I won't work at a university. I still actually am interested. Hampton, I think, would be really happy for me to come back,
Mhm.
and work for them, and I would if I didn't have to be local. I just do not wanna move down there.
Yeah.
But I think that going into a university and teaching at a university is still in my future.
Mhm.
I just wanna figure out the way to do it that makes the most sense for me.
Yeah, by the time you're ready, you're just gonna end up being overqualified for, you would have
And
passed
honestly,
the
if I had
tenure
to come
stage for
in
professorship. What?
yeah, maybe I just get, the gratis position or whatever it may be. I don't even need the pay. I'm like, I've been
Well,
considering
don't
just
say
going.
that. Don't say that. Everybody will soup you up, and they'll people are usually happy and excited to not have to pay you anything, so don't say
Yeah,
it.
you're right. I'll take that. You could delete
You don't
that.
wanna say that at all, you know? And then that's what ends up happening, if people know you love that. It's
I
and
know.
especially folks like us, it's very easy to end up in that position,
Yeah, yeah,
because you do the work, money talks. But
every time.
let's hope that, we can get back to a stage where we as a society and as a country can appreciate, our knowledge generating and knowledge producing nature of our culture.
Yeah.
I don't think we realize that that's where the innovation lies in all the errors and all the mistakes. So when you were talking about what you were doing there, Texas sales was it? Because unfortunately, the way we think about research and knowledge we don't understand is oftentimes not to necessarily be open about it, but to dismiss it. And so, it's important work. It's important work. I didn't tell you I downloaded your papers, and
Oh,
I do. I have a bunch of your papers. Like, oh, wait a second, because of the instrument I initially I had created an instrument looking at self-efficacy indicators, and mostly because I felt like all the instruments out there is, I wanted to focus on HBCU setting and
mhm, mhm,
understanding the role of community and family
mm.
and so there's a physics component and an engineering in addition to all the others that the late I don't know if you know her, the late Dr. Michaela Mu, who used to be at Howard.
I recognize
Yeah,
that name, yes.
I still have not gotten to looking at that data, but she was really instrumental in helping me as a professor to collect that data.
Fine.
And she shared it out with her students and um really was good at helping me to get a high number. So I'm so curious about your work, the arts, which is coincidentally, I do have the blog should be out today. Which was like, wait a second, this is so coincidental. I have a blog coming out that I submitted to a society for comparative and integrative biology about
Oh,
loving the arts. And
yes.
it's actually called I title it "Love Leads Me Back to the Arts."
Mhm. I love
Yeah.
that.
So
My god.
she said it'll be back out Tuesday, but I'll see if it's out today or next week, but hopefully we'll see.
Yeah, I would love to see that. I would love to see that. I think the way basically my idea of creating basically a full intro sequence, physics sequence
Mhm.
that incorporates performance arts into the
Mm.
physics content.
Yeah.
And so I'm working with Timia Williams, a student and just a long-term colleague of mine. Like we've been working together since she was an undergrad and I was at CU Boulder.
Mhm.
Are kind of doing this on the side. She's in another master's program. She does for like drama-based pedagogy specifically, but she taught physics in a high school before that, right? So she's just another kindred spirit of someone who loves the arts and then studied physics. And so we found each other at CU Boulder because she was an intern, one summer program they had out there. And they were like, "You're a person who likes physics and theater. You should go work with this too." Of course, they knew I was the only person they knew who was doing something like that.
Yeah.
And so she is on papers that were published and used in my dissertation. Like, she helped me with the analysis of the interviews with the physicist about, like, what performance art background they've had.
Mhm.
But me and her
Wow.
are now working on this, and we've presented, like, a lesson at a conference this year that used, like, dance and movement to learn about mapping vectors.
Yeah. Wow.
And
Nice.
so, yeah,
Yeah.
that is where I spark. Like, I love the idea of just trying to find very exciting ways to, like, represent physics concepts
Mhm.
that connect. Sorry, that is my dog barking at another dog. That yeah. So I'm passionate about really being creative about how to represent physics using the performance arts, because yeah, I think that's where magic can happen with Black folks, and that's maybe where they can start seeing themselves in physics the way I have seen myself in physics.
And if I'm not mistaken, there's another professor I know about who is doing something similar, except that he's in dance and I think he's either doing physics, the physics of dance, or I don't think it was the anatomy physiology, but it could be one of either. And so,
Oh, yeah, I'd love to
yeah,
learn who that is,
I'll
make
have
sure I
to
know them
share that.
already.
You probably do.
I hope. Or actually, I hope I don't, because I want more people to be doing it.
Absolutely. But, wow. Well, this has been great. I just think I know we can go on and on. We'll have to do this again another time because I can continue this conversation. Everything you said, I actually, I did a separate episode on math. Everything you said was really important. And this journey is important. And this is why I do this podcast because our journey is very unique. And oftentimes it's different, even during the pandemic. Things that happened to, Black folks personally. I was able to even observe, right, what was happening to white folks or, friends or family or Black folk versus Black folks or friends and family. And, the struggles were real. The struggles are there and the struggles are different, especially since the resources are there. The level of stress is different and for different reasons. Sometimes not the reason people suspect. But what I have found also is our journey through this process, entering STEM, choosing non-traditional versus, is very different. And there are reasons for these choices. And I think that not only do people need to understand, but we also need to understand because there's so much unpacking there, especially when you talked about imposter syndrome. I've seen firsthand that you're right. Some of it is intentional, right? And some of it is not. And some of it is where people are unaware of how it causes. And so these are the things I love having these conversations. And I think these are things that are important to know.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, I agree.
Thank you. Thank you so
Right.
much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Um, any last minute things you want to leave the audience with before we leave?
Yes. Yes, I will say you have the power to become who you dream to be. And that is just my mantra for the world. We also have the power to build the world we wanna see, and I hope you're out there doing that because I know I'm trying.
Awesome. Well, it's very inspiring and very, very great advice. Thank you so much, Dr. Hyater-Adams, for joining us today. And if you enjoyed this episode, please like it and subscribe for the next episode of Learning for Truth and Love.